Dr. Davis, Dean Charney, esteemed faculty and staff, proud family and friends, and most importantly, graduates of the class of 2017, good morning and congratulations. It's an honor to be with you as you celebrate this incredible milestone. Whether you are the first physician in your family, or the next in a long line of healers, or whether you're embarking on a career in basic science and public health, I know how proud your families and friends must be today. Over the last several years, you have all been on a journey together. You have spent thousands of hours studying, at least most of you. You have taken countless exams, and you have consumed dangerously high doses of free caffeinated beverages in your Sinai mugs. Now, many of you probably found yourself doing things over the last few years that you never imagined you would do, like eating right after anatomy lab before you've had a chance to wash your hands, and even more disturbingly, not being too bothered by it. Or like eating food from unused patient trays. Because as they say in the hospital, eat when you can and pee when you can. But you've also done extraordinary things for your community. You led a team of organizations to get health insurance coverage for East Harlem residents. More than half your class volunteered in the East Harlem Free Clinic. You created a citywide coalition on dismantling racism in health, and you participated in countless global health efforts. You have also overcome great hardships together. You have grappled with difficult family meetings and the death of your patients. You have struggled to balance relationships with the demands of your training. And when your dear classmate, Catherine, was lost in August, you came together to honor her life, and you worked to create a more supportive and loving environment. And thanks to your work, other schools are now looking to your example as they seek to create change. Like many of you, my own journey to this stage was a pretty unlikely one. If life was governed by probability, I would be growing rice, tamarind, and coconuts in a poor farming village in South India. I would be just barely scraping together the resources to feed my family and to clothe them, because that was the life that my grandfather led and that my father was also destined to lead. But the funny thing about dreams is that they take root in unlikely places. And my father, in the midst of bracing poverty, found himself dreaming of a brighter future, full of opportunity, in a land far away. He was dreaming of America. And nearly 40 years ago, my parents managed to come to America with little money and few connections, but with high hopes for the life they could build for themselves and for their children, my sister and me. They inspired me to become a doctor through their own care for patients, and they raised my sister and me to believe that America was a place where your ideas and your willingness to work hard mattered more than the color of your skin or the sound of your accent or whether you had a funny-sounding name. And despite all of our perfections as a nation, I stand before you fully aware that in no other country in the world could the grandson of a poor farmer from India be asked by the president to look out for the health of an entire nation. And that is the power and the promise of America, and I will be forever grateful for it. Now, as you step into the world with your new degrees, you may be wondering, what kind of world am I inheriting? Now, if you consume a lot of media, which I should warn you could be hazardous to your health, but if you do consume a lot of media, you likely feel a pervasive sense of unease, uncertainty, and anxiety. And while the challenges we face are real, I want you to know how much possibility and hope the world does in fact hold. Each day I traveled our country as Surgeon General, I saw reasons to be optimistic about America in the faces and stories of the people that I met. The community members in Flint, Michigan, who organized volunteers to go door to door to educate neighbors on how to drink safe water, even though they and their families were under threat. The Native American children who ran the I Am Indian program to strengthen Indian culture among their peers to prevent experimentation with drugs and alcohol. The doctors I met in Virginia who began planting gardens behind their clinic so their clinic could provide food for patients who just didn't have enough. And the parents who I met in every corner of our country who had lost a child to drug overdoses, but who were transforming their pain into education and advocacy so that other parents could be spared their unspeakable tragedies. There is a lot of good to be found in the world. We need only look for it. But there are real challenges too. We are struggling with an epidemic of chronic illness, particularly around substance use and addiction. We have millions of people who are uninsured and underinsured, and we are paying the price today for underinvesting in prevention and public health for decades. But perhaps most alarming to me, there is a deep sense of division in our country that is driven by fear. Fear of change and fear of the unknown that too often translates into a fear of those who are different from us. Fear that leads us to lose sight of our core values of equality, opportunity, and respect for all. Fear that leads us to retreat into our corners instead of standing together to take on tough problems, like how to address critical health threats such as the opioid crisis, and how to ensure that everyone has access to affordable care. Division and fear are contributing to the epidemic of chronic stress that has gripped our nation, and that epidemic is fueling violence, alcohol and drug use, chronic illness, and increased mortality. What does it mean to all of you to be a health professional in a world such as this? It means that the world needs you to not only care for the patient and the community in front of you, but the world needs you to embrace your role as a moral leader in society. A moral leader in society. A moral leader who inspires us to reflect our values in our words and our actions. A moral leader who leads by example. A moral leader who brings people together across divisions and enables them to see each other more clearly for who they really are. As physicians, as people of science, being a moral leader means speaking out for the most vulnerable among us. It means standing up for science and for truth. It means working with community partners to improve access to healthy foods and to address neighborhood violence. It means not being afraid to write op-eds in your local paper and appear on local media when proposed policies would hurt your patients. And it means holding elected leaders accountable for meeting the needs and upholding the values of our communities. Now, historically, this is not what our profession does. We have been reluctant to embrace such a role as this. We have shied away from wading into controversy or appearing to be political. But your obligation from today onward is to stand up for the vulnerable and the voiceless. If that means engaging in controversy, then do it anyway. If that means risking being labeled as political, then do it anyway. Principles are only worth having if you have the courage to act on them. You now have a powerful voice. Use it to improve people's lives. As you embark on this journey, this beautiful journey which begins today, there are 3 gifts that I wish for you. Gifts that will help you be the moral leaders that our country needs. The first gift is clarity. the ability to see clearly whether we are holding true to our values. Moral clarity requires us to reflect honestly on our words, our actions, and how we're treating each other. It requires us to ask difficult questions. Are we measuring up to our highest standards? One conversation that will remain forever etched in my memory was with the father of a young boy who had been tragically killed in the heartbreaking school shooting in Newtown in 2012. The boy's name was Daniel, and he had a special gift. Whenever there was someone who was left out or sad on the playground or in the cafeteria, Daniel would notice, and he would walk over to talk or just to sit with them. Daniel was all of 6 years old. Yet he noticed when the rules of kindness and inclusion were not reflected in the world around him, and he took action. Daniel's moral clarity is what we need more of in the world. As you look at your life and the world around you, ask yourself whether we are living up to the values of equality, opportunity, and respect for all. Because we cannot fix what we cannot see. The second gift I wish for you is courage. Courage is not the absence of doubt or uncertainty. Let me be very clear about that. Courage is the ability to move forward even in the face of uncertainties and fear. Courage is what will allow you to speak the truth and to defend the truth, especially when it is inconvenient. When the Twin Towers fell on 9/11, on that fateful morning 16 years ago, thousands of Manhattan residents fled south looking for an escape from the growing inferno behind them. But instead of relief, they were greeted by the unforgiving waters of the Hudson, which offered no path to safety. The panicked crowd continued to grow until the U.S. Coast Guard made a pivotal decision. They issued a radio call to every civilian ship in the area, asking them to join on an unprecedented citizen rescue mission. The response was overwhelming. Within minutes, the Hudson was covered with scores of boats streaking toward the southern tip of Manhattan. They pierced through the dense cloud of dust and debris and brought soot-covered people on board, offered them water, and ferried them to safety. In 9 hours, nearly 500,000 people were rescued. The 9/11 boat lift became the largest boat rescue in the history of the world. Now, the 9/11 boat lift was powered by ordinary people. They were never trained in emergency response. They would never have described themselves as heroes. And they had every reason to flee for safety themselves. But their courage is what allowed them to act. Vincent Ardolino, the captain of the Amberjack, said his wife thought he was a maniac for heading toward Manhattan on that fateful day. But he knew that he had to go. Never go through life saying you should have, he said later, reflecting on that decision. If you want to do something, you do it. To provide the moral leadership that our country needs, to close the gap between our highest values and our status quo, requires courage. Courage to speak the truth, courage to model our values, and courage to demand change when it is needed. The third and final gift that I wish for you is love. I have come to believe that there are two emotions that primarily drive all of our actions: love or fear. Love has its many manifestations, like generosity, compassion, forgiveness, kindness, and joy. Fear has its manifestations too, as jealousy, anger, anxiety, cynicism, and insecurity. And while fear can be motivating in the short term, it is exhausting in the long term. Operating out of fear for a prolonged period of time leaves individuals and societies hollowed out, depleted, and bitter. The challenge we face today is that the world is locked in a struggle between love and fear. We see it in discussions around the dinner table and in our workplaces. We see it in our public discourse and in our politics. As moral leaders in society, there's a fundamental question of identity that we have to help answer. And that is, will we be a nation that is governed by fear? Or will we be a nation that, when confronted with the choice, chooses love over fear? There will always be some who choose to lead by instilling fear. That has been true throughout the history of our world. But leading by fear is a weak approach that scorches the spirit and leaves everyone less whole. True leadership means leading with that ultimate source of strength, love. As society's newest leaders, the choice of how to lead starts with all of you. Lead with love, always. Love is the world's oldest medicine. Love is our greatest source of power. It is what we need to build a nation that is safe and strong for us and for our children. Graduates of the class of 2017, I stand here before you to tell you in no uncertain terms that America needs you. This is your time to step up and to be the moral leaders that our country needs. Leaders who can inspire a nation to live by its highest ideals. With your voice and your example, you can remind us of who we are when we forget. As you go forward to begin this next chapter in your lives, never forget that the most important qualities you needed to be a healer are the ones that you have before you arrived at Mount Sinai. Your ability to care deeply about a fellow human being. Your ability to be authentic in your words and actions. Your ability to lead with love. The years that follow are going to be a whirlwind. Your lives are only going to get more full and faster paced. But that is why I also wish for you moments of pause where you can stop, rest, and reflect. This might be a few minutes to write in a journal, to meditate, or simply to breathe. But the world won't automatically give us these moments. We have to create them. But it's in those moments of calm where we gather ourselves and set forth with a clear mind and a renewed heart. And if you ever forget the power of pausing, we need only put our hand on our chest and remember the lesson of our heart. As all the new doctors know here, the heart operates in two phases: systole, where it pumps blood to the vital organs, and diastole, where it relaxes. Most people assume that systole is where all the action is. And the more time in systole, the better. But diastole, the relaxation phase, is where the coronary blood vessels fill and supply life-sustaining oxygen to the heart muscle itself. Pausing, it turns out, is what sustains the heart. I'd like you to take 10 seconds with me and just close your eyes. Think about the people whose kindness and love help make today a reality. I'll keep track of the time. Class of 2017, the people you thought of are your anchors. They stand with you, and the world stands before you brimming with possibility. I hope you always run toward that which you love. I wish you many moments of diastole. May you all have lives full of joy, full of connection, and full of happiness. Congratulations.